So give it 1 second to catch up. 3, 2, 1. We may be caught up now. Yes. Okay. This is the second half, or the second 3/4 of the Cluster B Society discussion and tips for better mental health. So sorry about that. We had some weird technical difficulty. The camera went out for a second. Couldn't see my beautiful Punam. So we're back. And so what we were talking about just before we dropped off was a transition. College students, right? College students are transitioning to a different type of lifestyle. So that comes along with stress. So
yeah, in addition to the stress of going off to college or being in college, there's competition. If you're an athlete, now all of a sudden you're competing against more athletes than when you were in high school. You might have been a star in high school,
right,
and you might not even make the team in college.
Right. You were a big fish in a small pond. Now you're a small fish in a big pond.
Right. That happened to me when I went to college, and I was a baseball player. But in high school, I was one of the best players in the town.
Right.
And being scouted by pro teams and like that. Go off to college, all of a sudden now the all-stars from the other towns that went to that college are just as good or better than me. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm not the star anymore.
Right.
And so now you have to adapt. And these disorders that we're talking about are exacerbated by what's happening in the culture. Now we have social media.
Right.
A lot of comparative observations on social media. There are a lot of false comparisons.
Yep.
People thinking they have to be like this particular star on social media. Then you also have a culture of victimhood. Well, I'm a victim because of this or that. And put all this together and you have an increase in these cluster B disorders.
Right. And so just to review, because we did get it cut off. So just kind of to review where we're at for anybody who just joined. We're talking about a Cluster B Society. And so what Cluster B is, a term that comes from the DSM, or the Diagnostic Statistics Manual, which is this big book that they use to help kind of diagnose mental disorders, right? And so what has been happening specifically in college students, there's been a large number of college students that have been exhibiting these mental disorders that are in Cluster B. And Bob went over them before, but if you just review them one more time.
So in Cluster B is narcissism, borderline personality disorder, antisocial disorders, histrionic disorder, and schizophrenia. And we'll go over some of the characteristics of each of these just briefly.
Yep.
And those were considered in Cluster B, which is a section of the DSM.
Right. And then what we had just gotten done talking about is some of the possible reasons for the increases of these disorders. And the three that Bob had just mentioned was there's been a bigger culture of accusation. Accusations flying, people, especially with social media, there's a lot of confrontation that happens there. False comparisons, again, from things you see on television, again, social media, internet. There's not these comparisons that you're making against things that aren't really comparable. A lot of people use filters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and then there's a kind of a culture of victimhood. You are the victim because of, as opposed to taking maybe a little bit more of a longer look and possibly seeing your responsibility in some of the situations.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. That's where we were.
And so just to quickly go through some of these things. So the people, you'll hear this all the time, right? Oh, that person's a narcissist.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yes.
What are the characteristics? Right. One is entitlement. Right. Another is self-importance. And another is self-righteousness. And it comes along with resentment. Right. Resentment for many different reasons. Now, the borderline personality disorder is more of a low self-esteem, which sometimes can make people act narcissistic. Right? So that's where they call them a cluster.
Oh, okay. They can overlap a little.
And they have very black and white thinking. You and I know some people like that. a feeling of emptiness, right? And in the extreme, self-harm
Mm.
and even suicidal tendencies.
Oh, okay.
Right?
All right.
The other is antisocial personality disorder. These are people that are very impulsive, maybe very manipulative. They have a disregard for others.
Mm.
And then in extreme, they might become aggressive or even violent.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And we just saw an issue yesterday
Mm.
up in Maine
Yes.
with a mass shooting where they already knew that this particular individual was having problems with a mental disorder.
Actually, I had heard that he had actually threatened to do the same thing he did at another place prior to this.
Yeah.
They just became aware of that.
And he had been in the hospital actually for this mental disorder. The other is histrionics, which is excessive emotional displays, excessive attention seeking, and a need for sympathy. And so some people might exhibit a combination of these tendencies, and that's why they call it this cluster.
Okay.
Now, if you go even more to the extreme, people may actually have schizophrenia.
Mm.
And schizophrenia is a whole nother complete different topic, the causes of it and the treatment for it and like that. But that is in cluster B as well.
Interesting. So now the reason why we're talking about this is because what we've been reading and what we were looking at was saying that not only are there more individuals, mainly a lot more college students that are exhibiting these disorders in cluster B, but they're exhibiting all of them, not just one or two, but they're exhibiting all of them. Does that include the schizophrenia as well?
Well, it's in cluster B, but mostly it's those four that we talked about where they're exhibiting bits and pieces of each one, and a lot of it is coming from stress. So we talked about the college students, the lots of change, and it's not only that they are under stress, but the people around them are under stress.
Gotcha.
And even the people who are the most well adapted can have a negative effect from the stress of people around them, because we know that when people are under stress, they're secreting extra cortisol.
Mm-hmm.
That cortisol actually comes out through their skin and gets into the air and lands on the skin of other people.
Interesting.
And can cause the people around you stress.
Interesting.
Right?
So it's not just a thing when someone says, wow, I can feel you're stressed out, or I can, how if you're in a close proximity with someone, maybe you share, you have a loved one that you live with, or you share an office with someone, and you can kind of feel that stress radiating off of them. It's not just a feeling. It's actually could be this cortisol. Also, too, we talk about how the heart emits a field.
Electromagnetic pulse.
Right. And so
that... and the characteristics of that pulse can change dramatically based on the state of mind of the individual that's emitting it, both from their heart and their brain.
Right.
And that pulse goes out fairly strongly, about 5 feet, and your pulse is having an effect positively or negatively on the people that are around you.
Very cool. Very interesting. Yeah. And so don't just think that you're alone in this issue. There's actually physiological things that share this feeling with others. And if someone reaches out, that's another thing. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And if someone asks you how you're feeling or if you need to talk, if you really do, take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And so these stressors change your brain chemistry, right? Mm-hmm. And your brain chemistry can get out of balance. Your norepinephrine, your dopamine, your serotonin, try to find a balance. And if they get out of balance one way or another, it's going to cause you to feel depressed, to feel anxious. And that can happen for many, many different reasons, including your diet. Excess of sugar is one that's really bad for your stress. Okay. And it also can happen from the way that you think and believe things and the way you process information and the way you might be getting stuck in a pattern, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we know that in the United States, the average person is of the belief that things are not okay 95% of the time.
Yes, we've talked about this.
Yeah. And so this creates this pattern that goes on and on and on. And every day you're in this state of background anxiety where your unconscious mind is going, things are not okay. Things are not okay.
Yeah.
Right now, what you want to do really is be able to be in a position of awareness so that you can stand guard at the door of your mind. And if you can't stand guard at the door of your skin and you're absorbing cortisol from others,
Right.
what you can do,
Wear a long sleeve shirt. No.
Actually not a bad idea,
Whoa.
but it's still going to hit your face.
Right.
But what you can do is make it so that you have a way to block any of the negative feelings that might come about. So if you start to feel anxious because you're around someone who's stressed out, right, you have to switch and it may have happened because the cortisol landed on you. Now you need to be extra vigilant to focus on what you're grateful for. Why is that? Because it's the opposite of things are not okay.
That's why you do it, because it works and it's the opposite of where your mind is going. Exactly. And that gratitude actually connects to the brain.
Yeah. Yes. And you can, by doing this, you can get into a state where you can be empathetic.
Right.
To yourself and also to the person who might be causing you the stress.
Yep.
And with that, by being able to be present for that person, because you have this skill, you'll be able to easily slide into a mode of communication that we call NVC, nonviolent communication, or they also call it compassionate communication. For people that are college students in particular, but this is great for everybody, do yourself a favor and get the book Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg and study it with a friend, with a boyfriend or girlfriend, with a spouse, with people at work, because it works better when you can actually practice it with people.
Yeah, I think I told you the story. Actually, when we went on this is a mug from the Great Smoky Mountain Railway. When we went on this railroad trip, it's a little hour and a half there, an hour and a half back, so like a 3-hour train trip. There was a gentleman on the train reading the book. So you could also study it with the guy on the train.
There you go. Practice it. And essentially what we're doing is we're helping ourselves and the other person we're communicating with to validate their feelings.
Right. That's a focus on feelings.
Yeah. So as you're listening to a person, you're going to be seeing how they're feeling. Right. Instead of trying to finish their sentences or plan your response, just focus on how it is that you think they're feeling. And then that's your response. Wow, that was interesting. It seems like you're feeling excited about that. Or that was interesting. It seems like you're feeling depressed or angry. Right. And then you let the other person respond, because chances are you won't guess it on the first try because they'll go, well, no, I'm just disappointed. Right. And so, but it opens the dialogue. And you go, and this then is where you can move to the next part of nonviolent communication, which is needs.
Right.
Wow, that's interesting. It seems to me that maybe you need some time away. Maybe you need a friend to talk to. Maybe you need to take a little bit of time and go and meditate, right? And let the person respond.
Right.
Well, no, I think really all I need is to, make sure that my boyfriend cleans the garage.
There you go. Okay. That's pretty specific, but I like it. I know. We can do it's a very achievable thing. Right. But no, that's good.
And then the R in OFNR, Offner, which is the 4 steps of nonviolent communication, is a request, a reasonable and respectful request
Absolutely.
that you might do of a person, or you might encourage them to do of you.
Correct. And actually, we have a whole show on boomerboost.com. I actually put up the website right there on the screen. If you go there, we have, well over 100 podcasts now and blogs and recipes and tips on stress. So go check out boomerboost.com under the podcast and blog section and look for how to use nonviolent communication. It's a whole dedicated podcast to the technique.
Yeah, excellent. The other thing people can check out is there's a book called Validation Therapy. So nonviolent communication is essentially validating another person's feelings and then helping them in a way that respects their feelings. Validation therapy, there's actually a book about it called The Validation Breakthrough by Naomi Feil.
Okay.
And this is a book about how to validate the feelings of very old people who might have dementia or might have a personality disorder, because as they've aged, they are acting out or trying to resolve past issues in their life, past traumas.
Interesting. Okay.
Or things that they felt were done to them that were wrong. And so you might check out that book too. If you have an elderly relative or a relative with dementia, validation therapy is very helpful.
Okay.
And Naomi was the one that taught the classes on that. I used to bring her to my nursing homes to teach my staff validation therapy, and then they would communicate with the elderly people that way.
And it obviously seemed to work.
We actually did a study on it that the health department in New York State funded. We did it throughout 6 nursing homes, and it showed that validation therapy could stop the progression of dementia.
Really?
Yeah. It was proven in a double-blind study that was implemented by a research institute of gerontology called the Ringel Institute, and PhD level researchers directed by Dr. Tosland were commissioned to do the observation for the study. So it was outside people, not Bob, who initiated the research, which I designed the research, but they then said, well, you can't be the one that collects the data because you already have a readiness to believe it's going to work, or you wouldn't be doing it, and we can't have that. So they became the outside observers and wrote the paper, the scientific paper that was submitted to the health department to validate
the validation therapy.
To validate that we actually spent the money the way that they wanted us to.
Well, it costs money to validate validation therapy.
That's right.
I mean, you got to make sure if you're validating people that it's working.
Absolutely.
So that's great, though. But it really did show that it can help halt the progression of dementia?
Yes. Yeah. And on average, it halted the progression. With some people, they didn't really have a physiological reason for dementia. It was all psychological.
I remember we talked about that on another show, where sometimes dementia can be, or people can be misdiagnosed with dementia
when they really have depression.
When they're really depressed.
Right. Or they're experiencing, they're reliving traumatic episodes that gets them locked in.
Interesting.
And validation therapy is just one technique to help people get through. But, Raleigh, Naomi Feil also said that in the process of using validation therapy, which is a talk therapy, that if you also touch the elderly person on their cheek with your hands and rub their cheek, it also helped them to calm down, and they were much better able to accept the talk therapy. It was, at the time, she didn't know it was a form of havening, but she knew it worked. And now, many years later, havening was created, and they now know exactly what happens to the brain waves and the neurochemistry in the amygdala when you use havening.
Absolutely. Actually, it's another one. We have a great podcast on that at boomerboost.com. We interviewed Hillary Russo, practitioner, havening practitioner. We talked about the specifics on it. And actually, if you watch that podcast, she gives you a way to get a free havening session so you can try it out. So definitely go to boomerboost.com and look for that. It's called What is Havening with Hillary Russo.
Yeah.
And
and Raleigh, perfect thing for college students,
It is.
right?
It is.
Perfect thing.
Absolutely.
Because it's so easy to do and it's so effective and
Mhm.
so helpful.
Very good.
Right? You know, we were talking about shifting your focus from things are not okay to what am I grateful for?
Right. The gratitude.
Right. And this is, and by doing that, you're helping to reduce your reactivity.
Mhm.
So you
That's
can
true.
get into a habit of being triggered by certain things that evoke certain emotions,
Yep.
and it becomes like an automatic reaction. And so, what Bruce Lee said, the famous martial artist,
Love Bruce Lee.
he said that making progress every day toward your goals spiritually and mentally is a combination of focusing on what you want, your
Mhm.
goals, but also chipping away at what you don't want.
Mm-hmm.
And it meaning what types of beliefs are not serving me very well, what type of reactions and gestalts do I have that I can chip away at.
What kind of habits?
Yeah, and what habits. So what can we do in order to chip away?
Right.
So one is that works incredibly well is tapping, the emotional
Yes.
freedom technique.
That's a very good
Can
solution.
switch a belief very, very quickly. So say, for example, you have a fear of failure, right?
Mhm.
Big one for a college student. Or better yet, you have a fear of failing the test you're about to take.
Right.
Big issue. Test anxiety
Huge.
for college students causes a lot of problems.
It is.
And test anxiety is basically worrying that you're not going to do well on the test, even though you've studied, right? And and it's a very real thing. You might not do well on the test if you're worried.
It's
And the
true.
reason is that memory is state dependent.
Mhm.
So if you're studying in your dorm room, maybe lying in bed with your feet up on a pillow and you're reading your book, studying, and you got some nice music playing, you're in a particular state of mind.
Yes.
Now you go to the classroom to sit down with your number 2 pencil,
Right.
and you're not in that state anymore.
No.
You're in a pressure state. Now
Correct.
I have to remember everything.
Right.
You're not lying down, you're sitting up. Okay. You're in a different mental state, and you will not be able to remember everything that you learned in the other state. You want to be in the same state. So you have to be relaxed when you take your test, the same way you were relaxed when you were studying.
Exactly.
And so you can do this by using tapping for test anxiety.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And we even teach that to little children.
Yep. We actually created a website, schooltestprep.com. We
Yeah.
made a character named Johan in a little cartoon that talks about it and for younger children. And you know, that's a real thing. I mean, even personal experience when I was a kid, I mean, I was a decent test taker, but when it came to math specifically,
Yeah.
I mean, I could do some of the worksheets. I didn't have too much of a problem doing the homework, but when it came time to regurgitate that onto the paper, I remember this feeling, even to the day, of just second guessing myself.
Mm-hmm.
Is this right? Am I right?
Right.
Did I do this right? Even though I knew that I mean, I knew how to do it, but on that test, I was so worried about getting a bad grade or
Yeah.
in that different state of mind that all I could think about was, wait, second guess, second guess, second guess.
Yeah. So tapping, this is something that could help college students tremendously. If you can just take away test anxiety
Mhm.
from the collection of anxieties, all right, because test anxiety is laden with complications. If you do poorly on the test, you're not going to get good grades. Now you might get kicked out of college.
Right.
You might not be able to get into graduate school. You might make your parents angry because you're not getting good grades.
Right.
So it compounds itself. So this is a big favor that people that are watching this can do for anyone they know who is a student
Of
that
any
has to
age.
take tests. Doesn't matter if they're 7 years old or if they're 50 years old working on their PhD.
Right.
All right. So, and we'll we'll show it right now, which is similar to what we made in schooltestprep.com.
Very
Now,
similar.
that's a cartoon, but adults can learn from it too. But
Right.
we'll show a version for adults right
Yeah.
here. So tapping is tapping on your fingertips. Take the middle finger of your right hand or left hand, doesn't matter, and tap on the outside of the nails of your other hand, about 5 times on each nail, and then tap on your karate chop point like this. You're activating your meridians, and now your brain is ripe for reprogramming.
Right.
Right? So it would sound the verbiage you would use, this affirmation is, even though up until now, I thought I had to have this anxiety about taking tests, I completely love and accept myself anyway. And I'm so grateful now that I realize with this magic tapping, I can put myself into a calm state, just like I was in when I was studying. I know that memory is state dependent, and I'm beginning to feel very calm and peaceful. And I have a great knowing that I shall ace this test. Okay? Cross your hands over your heart and breathe in. Breathe out, drop your chin. And now you're relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can take the test. You're not worried. Your memory will skyrocket in its ability. And this is a profound and simple technique for college students, high school students, grade school students, and it helps with your whole life, right? Because Raleigh, you have a child.
Yep.
Now, what happens if she's nervous about taking her math test? What happens if she gets a bad grade on her math test? It has a bad effect on her, right? She's like, oh, I want to be good in math. I want to be a straight A student because that makes me feel proud. But this math thing is getting me.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it's worry, worry. Right? And it's more than just, oh man, I got a C on my math test.
Right.
It's more than that. And so it's really important to know how to do this tapping technique.
And also too, I have to say, last year, Lana, my daughter's actually was like me, struggling in math, but we did this, and then we also made sure that the state that she was doing homework in would have been more similar to that as her taking a test.
Yeah.
So that way it wasn't, sometimes she would lay on her floor of her room and do it that way, and it would be good. She'd get it done, but what you were saying, I was kind of aware of, right? The different states. So you can make small adjustments to the way the studying is done. That way it's a little bit more of what they'll expect when they go in the classroom.
Yeah.
And that seemed to help out a lot, not taking away the music, because she loves to listen to music when she's doing homework. So I didn't take anything like that away. I just got it into a little bit more of a regimented thing. A little bit more of the right posture instead of laying down, relaxing on the floor, which is, again, not a bad thing. But if you're not going to be taking the test that way, then how will we be taking the test? Sitting up straight at the desk. So we moved to that more this year, and it seems to be helping her. Plus, I think she's probably got a much better teacher.
Yeah.
I remember last year, I say better, not necessarily the teacher doesn't know what they're doing. It's just the personality of the teacher matches better.
Yeah.
Right. And so you also have that as a stressor for not just young kids, but college students and high school students. Maybe you don't get along with your professor, or you don't agree, or sometimes that you don't like how they teach. And so that's another stressor. Well, I'm not going to learn anything from them. How am I going to learn anything?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So.
And you can, if you have a teacher that you're not matching up with, you can tap on that too.
Right.
It's
true.
Make up your own phrase related to that. But we're talking really about chipping away at things that we don't want.
Correct.
How to use tapping for that. And then the question is, well, why are we chipping away? Okay.
Right.
Why are we chipping away? And it's like when someone is creating a beautiful sculpture out of clay or out of marble, and they're going to chip away what's not needed.
Right.
And
there's a sculpture in there.
There's a beautiful sculpture in there. And we just chipped away what was not needed to reveal the sculpture within.
That's cool.
And the great sculptors can see that. They can see the sculpture and they know what to eliminate. And the same is true for a human being. If you have narcissistic tendencies, if you have a need for attention and sympathy, number one, you want to make sure that you have assistance of a professional, and because you don't want it to morph into the extreme of violence or suicidal tendencies, and that's the reason for the professional who can help you stop it before it gets there.
Yep.
But at the same time, also, you can use this chipping away to reveal what's beautiful within you.
Right.
A lot of people have mental health issues because of their self-esteem. They don't yet believe that they themselves are a valuable human being that's beautiful inside, that has worth and dignity. They're still learning that. Haven't learned it yet. But you can, and you can speed up that realization, okay, using tapping, and by chipping away at the things that are holding you back. You then will reveal to yourself and to the world that beautiful sculpture that is the sculpture of your soul, that you will then confidently bring to your each morning when you wake up. You gift that to yourself and to the others that you're around. And then guess what that does, really? That changes the pheromones that are coming from your face. It changes your pulsed electromagnetic field, right? It changes what's coming off of your skin. And then you not only can be self-actualized, but you can help all of those around you just by being the beauty that you are within.
That is beautiful. And that's true. I mean, one of the things that a lot of people have an issue with is accepting love and feeling worthy of love. I was watching a show yesterday where they're talking about a lot of people's anxieties, insecurities come from the fact that they aren't comfortable allowing themselves to love themselves or be loved by others. And so in this society, we have to recognize that with these tools that we're given: nonviolent communication, tapping, havening,
and affirmations.
And the affirmations.
Dr. Joe Dispenza the other day was talking about affirmations and using the phrase "I create." And he said, make a list of what you want to create and then affirm it.
Yep.
I create love for myself, love of myself. I create love for others. I create prosperity. And whatever your particular list is, make that list and pick a time each day to repeat those affirmations, maybe first thing in the morning. And you can do a technique we call the ultimate mind calming exercise. So a lot of times when people first wake up, they're thinking about, oh my God, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do that, I got to leave at this time.
Yep.
Anxiety. Give yourself 5 extra minutes, and in the morning, do head circles, which is called the ultimate mind calming exercise. You'll go into a state of no mind, a place where your brain stops, and then have your affirmations pre-established and just repeat them either out loud or in your own mind. And maybe just have 5 of them and repeat those affirmations. I create, I create, I create this, I create this, I create this. And then at the end, give gratitude as if all those creations have already happened. And I am so grateful now that I realize all of this is happening in due time, and I'm feeling grateful as if they're already done. Right?
Heck yeah.
Boom. Future pacing, right?
Yeah, that reset can be a very big help.
And so now that's how you start your day. Now, you get up and about, you might encounter something that you perceived as stressful, and you can even identify it and say, I'm recognizing that's a stressful situation, loud noise, whatever it is, and I notice it, and you can do a little tapping, right? I'm so grateful that I realize now that I am aware, and I can choose to interpret that so-called stressful thing differently, and completely love and accept myself the whole way through, right? Now, this is techniques to bring to your day. Otherwise, you're just going through your day and you're at the complete mercy of everything that happens around you,
Yep.
and you're being bombarded by it.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
you don't want that. You want to be standing guard at the door of your mind so the negative doesn't affect you. And you want to be projecting the positive.
Mm-hmm.
And then you will be able to help do your part in the prevention and treatment of these cluster B disorders,
Mm-hmm.
and work together with your psychologist, your psychiatrist, your counselor, but learn these techniques. Now, these techniques that we're talking about, Raleigh, these are not peripheral woo-woo techniques.
Right.
These techniques are known by your teacher, by your counselors.
They're known by some of the highest
Tens of
levels.
thousands of counselors have been trained in the emotional freedom technique. You can become certified like Hillary Russo, who is a social worker. You can become certified in Havening.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
You can become certified by the Inner Balance company called HeartMath
Yep.
on how to use an inner balance device. These have become mainstream techniques and cognitive technologies,
Mhm.
therapeutic technologies that are profound,
And that
And
actually
they're-
work, like the validation therapy.
and they work.
And
they
you had a
work.
whole study you
Right.
were part of on
Right.
that.
Yeah.
It's real stuff.
And the tapping technology created by a psychiatrist.
Yep.
Right.
It's
The havening technology created by a medical doctor.
right. You know, it's funny. You said woo woo, and I mean, it is funny. You from the outside, if you're just thinking about it, and you're not thinking about what's behind what you're saying and what you're doing, it does seem kind of weird. But what you're doing, especially with something like tapping, is and other things like havening, is you're combining all these sensory things that allow your emotion and your anxiety to kind of let go, right?
Yeah.
You're reconnecting belief structures. You're disconnecting and reconnecting belief structures. You're tapping into the physical chi of the body. You're developing new beliefs and ingraining them.
And coping technology.
And we probably the last thing we could go over, but it leads me to the technique we've spoken about before called revision scissors.
Yeah.
Where you say you're in a particular situation and during the day, and you have a response that you didn't necessarily want to have. Maybe you got irritated and yelled or something. At the end of the day, you go through, play that through in your mind, and that part that you wanted to act different, you cut out and replace it subconsciously with what you would have done.
Yeah.
And then it's almost like you're going back in time, timeline therapy,
Right.
cutting, replacing with the proper action in your mind that you would have rather have done. And then you've got an example for how to do that the next time that situation comes up.
You can go out on your timeline.
Neville Goddard.
Yeah. And after you've made the replacement, the part that you metaphorically snipped out, you can go forward on your timeline and then look back and go, I'm so grateful I had such a great day.
Yeah.
Right? Now, your unconscious mind has a hard time discerning what really happened versus what you replaced with.
That's why it works.
Neville Goddard was a profound spiritual teacher that taught that technique.
Yeah.
And said of all the things that he ever taught, which was an immense amount, that the magical shears of revision was the greatest gift he had learned and shared with
That's
other
cool,
people.
man. That's really cool when you think about it, because like you said, you can your subconscious, you can tap into that and change belief structures and be less reactionary, more proactive by tapping into that. And very cool stuff. Anyway.
That's what we got, Raleigh.
That's
Great
right.
job.
I guess revision scissors was one of the last things that we were thinking about. But anyway, listen, for all this kind of information, go to boomerboost.com. I put it up on the screen right now. Obviously, we also sell great products. Right now, we have a 15% off $150 or more. We also have free shipping on all U.S. orders. So if you haven't gotten a chance to try something, go and check it out. Either way.
Great discount on collagen.
Oh, that's right. Bob reminded me we have $10 off an individual bottle of collagen, or if you buy a 2-pack, you get $24 off. And collagen is actually one of the best things that we could say helps with muscle building, helps with digestion, along with skin, hair, nail, joint health combo. We have one of those as well. Combines our barley with the collagen and some vitamin C. So either way, you guys check out the products, check out the information, more importantly, on boomerboost.com. And it's been a pleasure. Bob, thank you.
Thanks, Raleigh. See everybody next time on Live Forever Young Radio Live.